Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Diana Bitner. I'm the co-founder and medical officer of True Women's Health. And we're here tonight to talk about gender identity and all the questions that are around this. We're here to celebrate Pride Month. You know, at True Women's Health, our goal is to provide care that's inclusive, without judgment, without shame, to help people live their true self, hence, of course, True Women's Health. I myself am an OBGYN doc. I am not an expert necessarily as another might be in terms of gender affirming surgery or gender affirming hormone treatment. But I am very interested, of course, for the same reason I went into medicine. I want to help people when they're vulnerable, when they're sick, when they don't feel well. I want to help them be who they want to be and reach their goals. And to us, gender identity and, again, questions around sexuality is a really critical part of what we do at True Women's Health. So we're here tonight to have a open and frank conversation. Brought two of my partners here in it from True, and look forward to your questions. If you have questions after the fact, or you're more comfortable asking a private message, please feel free to direct message on Facebook, and we'll get that question directed to Ashley. So I'd love Dr. Egan to talk about why she's here, and then we'll get started.
Hi, for all those who don't know me, from the True Women's Health community, I'm Dr. Celia Egan. I'm an internal medicine doctor, and really my main role is a primary care provider. And so my relationship with gender and sexuality really comes from the primary care world. And I've dealt with a number of patients on a variety of aspects of this subject. So, as Dr. Bitner said, I'm also here because we care about taking care of vulnerable people. And a lot of the times patients struggling either with gender or sexuality issues that they're maybe not sure of themselves, maybe it's happening to family members, we want to be there to sort of help and support. And we continue to believe that educating ourselves as well as patients is really imperative.
Agreed.
And I'm Dr. Ashley Wildman. I have a Ph.D. in counselor education and supervision. And I have worked with many clients over the years who have had questions or issues around coming to terms with their gender identity or their sexuality or some combination thereof, along with a lot of parents or siblings or grandparents of people who are making some sort of transition or coming out in some way. And it's been something that I've been very honored to be part of that in their journeys. So we just, all wanted to be here and let you guys know that this is something that we think is important, and that we are here to answer your questions and also let you guys know a little bit more.
Ashley, I love how you bring that up. This really is sacred space, that we share with patients when people are very vulnerable and come to us with fears and things that are so personal, so private, and it might be the first thing that they talk about or first time that they talk about it. So I agree with you, and I'm sure, of course, Dr. Egan as well. This is very sacred space.
Yeah.
Ashley, I love how you talk about this and educate. I know you've got a diagram for us, so I look forward to walking us through this. And again, everyone, feel free to put questions or comments in, and we'll answer as well as we can.
Mm-hmm. So I really like this diagram. This is called the genderbread person. I always have to not say genderbread person, to kind of gives an overview of like what is gender and sexuality and how does it relate to things like biological sex. So I do want to start with that biological sex piece at the bottom. That is usually the most straightforward thing, is that people are born with certain genitalia. And I like that. I think it's kind of funny that we have like gender reveal parties for babies when we're not really revealing their gender, we're revealing their genitalia. But there is, most people are kind of on this either, they have male genitalia or female genitalia. There are some people who are born that are intersex. And so that's what that third thing is. If you don't recognize the arrow and the cross that's going up to the left, that's what that is about. And so while most people are at one end or the other of that, there are some in between. And there are also some things we don't quite understand yet about like what actually makes up biological sex. What gender identity and gender expression are, often those go along with biological sex, but not always. So gender identity, they have it up in the head because that is your brain. Like what do you see yourself as? Do you see yourself more as a woman or more as a man? And then gender expression is what that looks like to people around you. And we often think, okay, biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, these all go together, but they can be very different things. For example, I know several women who are very masculine in their appearance. And they take pride in being very masculine in how they dress and how they groom themselves, that sort of thing. But they still very much see themselves as women. They're like, I don't want to get rid of my breasts. I don't want to get rid of my vulva. These are important to me, but I want to express myself more as more masculine, even though I see myself as a woman.
So Ashley,
yeah.
I just want to say, just comment for a second that, this is stuff that I'm not that particularly far outside of medical school that we didn't even learn in medical school. Mm-hmm. And I just love this diagram of how it is, because I do think that it very beautifully shows these different areas and how, patients and even physicians, providers can understand of how they're feeling. And the second piece I love about this is the spectrum. I don't know if you can comment a little bit about how, again, it's not like one or two levels, right? It's a wide range of womanness and manliness.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So one of the things that sometimes happens, like with gender identity, is someone might feel like I'm not really a man or a woman. And that might, a lot of people who identify that way, that they don't really feel like either one, they might say, well, I'm agender or I'm non-binary. And there's some people who are like, no, I kind of feel like both, right? I kind of feel there's sometimes in some places, in some ways, I feel very much like a woman and I feel very much like a man. And they would also consider themselves non-binary, but more maybe androgynous rather than agender. But there are lots of different words for these things. We're not going to go into like all the different things you can call yourself. But it's important, that it's not, okay, there's man on one side and woman on the other, but that there's not woman to very woman and then not man to very man. And you can be somewhere on both of those spectrum. Yes. Or I guess, is that a ray?
Yeah, right.
It's been a while since I've taken math.
I guess one thing I'd like to bring up and just have us, think about this. So I'm thinking out loud a bit, but how much of this is semantics? How much is this cultural? How much is this, I don't want to be defined by culture. I don't want to be defined by someone else's perception of me. I don't want to identify as that because I've had bad experiences with that. Like, Ashley, could you speak to that? Or Celia too, could you speak to that in terms of what is this, how much is it language? Mm-hmm. I've had lots of questions from parents that ask me, is it just language? Is it just sort of a phase? Is it a...
I mean, I do want to say, like, I think we need to be very careful about calling anything a phase.
100%.
Yeah, because
I don't mean that. No, I don't mean that.
Teenagers and college students, they are very much trying to figure out their identity. And I think what I want to say is that I think it's good in a sense that there are people trying to say, why do we have these binaries and why do we need like to have these certain labels, and I think that's going to get us to a better place of
100%.
understanding ourselves. So,
But even I had a parent who said, my daughter asked, is this a phase? What is this? And again, to your point of we're trying to figure this out. And again, I think it goes back to then it's to be curious. Like we're celebrating that we can be curious and learn and try to understand.
mm-hmm.
And I think it's always, so I always wonder myself, right? And when a lot of times we are talking to parents of, parents who are afraid and have a lot of questions. And I always, want to think to these parents how I would think, about dealing with any patients, of just providing empathy, of saying, wow, you must, it must be kind of scary to believe the world was one, only two ways. And now maybe that's not the way that it is, and how that may feel a little awkward and scary in the world that they're living in. And that's okay to have some time to try to understand this.
Well, and someone said to me, like, there's so much change in the world. There's so much going on. I thought this was one of the solid rocks, this binary world feels safer because there's so much other else going on. I can't deal with one more thing, that's not real clear. So yeah. And one thing I wanted to say about biological sex, as an obstetrician, I've delivered how many thousands of babies. And, I was taught if the baby comes out and we're not sure, it's really, 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 really critical, important to say, not it's a boy or it's a girl, because I think that's what it is. It's better to say, I'm not sure. Because depending on the genetics, depending on how things turn out, it's really important that in the parent's mind, there's not an identity right away that then has to be changed. It's much better to say, I'm not sure. So I remember that being the first introduction to this for me was, wow, okay, I never thought about that.
Yeah, and one of the things we're learning is that it used to be that you had to make a decision, like in the first week. Okay, what am I going to have? This kid is this kid going to be a boy, or is this kid going to be a girl? And we're learning, like, it might not be a good thing for us to make those decisions for these kids before they really know themselves. So, yeah. And I don't know. I think that's a good thing. So yes. I appreciate that. Yeah. And then the last bottom I just want to touch on briefly is sexual attraction and romantic attraction. Those are not necessarily about your own gender identity or gender expression, but more about, like, who are you interested in? And are you more interested in people who present more as female, or people who present more masculine? And again, there's I'm not attracted to anyone at all at one end, or I'm not attracted to any women, or I'm not attracted to any men, and then you can be attracted to both. And so that's something that is not necessarily, while we think about that as a biological sex thing or a gender identity thing, these things are very separate. So, yeah. Anything else you guys wanted to say about the genderbread person?
I think it's something important. I ask most people, hopefully I always remember too, is, how do you identify? So again, those are questions sometimes when, we have questionnaires for patients when they first come into True, and it's, how do you identify? How were you identified at birth? How, and how maybe were you raised? How do you identify? How do you express yourself? And who are you sexually attracted to, or who do you have sex with? So again, it's just, when I first learned about this topic and was more educated, I wanted to I wanted to be comfortable with the language so people would be comfortable sharing with me. And again, it's just created lots of really good conversations. Again, sometimes the answer is, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just, I think it's good that, people do, don't be offended if you're asked this question. You're like, well, of course, don't you know? I'm like, it's really important that we ask. And so I just want to say that we do ask these questions routinely, and we think it's really important to ask the questions and go from there.
Yeah, and to not make assumptions.
Correct. 100%.
Mhm.
I see Jenny has some questions. And Jenny, I see your questions about gender. I apologize. I don't know about this.
I fully admit, Jay, I have not seen this either come up. I do feel like I keep up a lot about thinking about brain scans for a variety of different reasons, but I have not seen anything about gender brain scans. Ashley, I don't know.
I'm not familiar with that either. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
I haven't.
Jenny, I'm sorry, but we
asked,
will.
so yeah,
educate
we can look it up and we can reach back out to you. Yeah.
Cool. So do we want to move forward into the next step? I mean, I think that's a really good basis, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll have that posted on our Facebook site so people can reference and see it afterwards.
And we want to know that if anybody, just to, again, to provide a safe space, if any of our patients even want to talk about that with us in the office, I think that could be another really safe space to sort of review this again, without judgment, and more to educate and to, again, to provide a good place to ask questions.
Exactly. And maybe the next part is let's move into our, takeaway points just to get more conversation going. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to chime in. And, let's start with number one. Is that good?
Yeah.
So question number one, or takeaway point number one, biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, there are 4 different things. I think we've covered this pretty well in our discussion so far. Any other comments, Sue?
I just a reminder again, this some of this stuff was not taught to all providers, and just having patients feel empowered to find a provider that they feel comfortable with, that can at least have a conversation and be open to understanding that all these different areas are different things, and that if you do not have to stick with a provider if you don't feel comfortable with their knowledge base. And it is something that I think a lot of doctors are trying to understand a lot about and more about. I definitely hear it from my colleagues, not just at True, but obviously in the outside world, that everyone's trying their best to understand, but always feel empowered to seek out someone who has a better understanding. And at True, we always can definitely help point you in the right direction if we don't have an answer to a question.
Well, and as you've seen tonight, if we don't know the answer, we'll tell you. We're not going to say we know something. We're not going to say it's silly because we don't know. Our goal is to really know the truth. I've been, so thankful to get to be exposed to education at ISHWISH, the International Society for the Study of Women's Sexual Health. We have a website called PROSAYLA, PROSAYLA, that has been. It's an outward facing. It's for people to read about in terms of different sexual questions around sexual attraction, sexual practices, about safety, about understanding, about low desire. Thanks, Missy, for that. So it's really great to have this as another resource. And again, if I don't know an answer, just like Dr. Egan or Ashley, we have people that we can find and get more answers, because again, just wanting to provide this very inclusive care. I feel very comfortable in terms of, questions about screening for cis male, for cis female, so it's anyways. So I guess we keep going.
And I think one of the other important things to know are there's doctors who do particular training with gender affirming hormone therapy, and it's none of us here at True, but to know that those people do exist actually in Grand Rapids, and in other parts of the country as well, obviously. But we'd much rather have patients seek out a provider who knows that area of medicine versus trying their best with someone who maybe doesn't have as much understanding. So please know that if you have questions about this for yourself, for your child, that we definitely can hook you up with experts in the area that could really provide you the best care.
Exactly. And we also have providers in Grand Rapids, West Michigan, who provide gender affirming surgery. Corwa Health just celebrated its 300th gender affirming surgery. And so I just love, again, that the system celebrates the fact that they're open, they're supportive, they're understanding. And The surgeons are very skilled. Again, this is definitely also something to have experience in. We're very experienced with providing hormone medication for women with primary ovarian insufficiency or early menopause and all those conditions thereof. But again, gender affirming hormone treatment, as Dr. Egan said, is a specialty. It's not something, again, we're trained in, but it's also important to have someone who has good experience. There's lots of nuances to such care, and safety first. We take the Hippocratic oath to
Yes.
provide safety first. So that's what it's all about. All right, number 2. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and read it. Gender identity and sexual orientation are not contagious. I had a friend who, she has a trans sister-in-law and was concerned about her children spending time, like, are they going to be confused by her, that sort of thing. And I was like, no, your kids, they know their genders. That is not something that is contagious anyway. You don't have to fear those sorts of things. So.
Well, Ashley, I commend you to provide a safe space where that patient felt comfortable even asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that that's what we try to do at True, is to provide these safe spaces for women to ask any question, right? Mm-hmm. Even without judgment, to, at least to be able to provide a good answer for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Number 3, go ahead.
Gender identity and sexual orientation cannot be changed. This is not to say that they're like absolutely stable for all people across their whole lifespan, but there's nothing you can do to actually treat or change in a particular way. So.
Yeah.
And it just makes me so sad that for so many years, people went through therapy to try to change, or they felt they had to, or there was court ordered even, right? Treatment to try to get someone to change. And it just kills me to think about how people have suffered that and, just caused unnecessary suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think this kind of even ties into number 3. Open conversations and direct questions do not guide a person to feel or identify as one gender or another. I guess back to point number 3, you're not going to change someone's gender identity by asking a question. How do you identify? How do you feel? What questions do you have about this? Like, again, it's okay to be curious. It's a form of support. Ashley, I can see your words here. Good. It allows for exploration. It's really important to, use these conversations to become closer, to provide support. There's no shame. There's no secrets. Again, to live authentic life, that secrets don't help with this.
Yeah. And I think that word shame is very complicated, right? And I think it's even okay if you as a person or as a parent particularly are dealing with a lot of shame surrounding some of these issues, to feel free to seek out your own therapy, right? And then that's okay to ask some of these questions, maybe in a safe space with a therapist that you trust, to deal with your own thoughts about shame, and because those are really deep rooted, and you may find a lot more relief in speaking with a professional than kind of just simmering in your own sort of thoughts. So, we always recommend, even if you don't know exactly what to say as a parent or a family member or a friend, that maybe exploring that a little bit, and particularly if you're feeling a lot of shame surrounding these issues with your families and friends.
Yeah. And I had a question from a mom whose child was coming out as gay, and she's like, I'm totally okay with it. I love my child. It doesn't change my feelings for them. But my parents, how do I deal with my parents? How do I deal with their cousins? Like, how do I deal with this? And again, we talked about it, and she found a therapist, probably Ashley or Mary Jo. I don't remember, but it was just, again, really important that she could talk about this and explore that feeling and have some language around how to bring this up and how to, defend her feeling, not defend, maybe Ashley is the right word, but to express herself without fear and have some good boundaries.
Yeah.
And I love what Brene Brown talks about a lot, right? It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. And it's okay to say to your child, if your child doesn't know or wants to talk about, is to say, I don't know what to say right now, but I love you. I support you. Let's talk about this. Tell me more. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable. They're being vulnerable to bring it up. It's okay to be vulnerable to also say, I'm struggling here just because I don't understand. Number 5, there are serious risks for mental health concerns of the person who identifies differently than the sex they were assigned at birth. And I love Ashley's point, only when a person has a non-affirming family and community. Ashley, would you want to talk about this a little bit more?
Yeah, we used to think that there was that being gender nonconforming or having a different sexual orientation rather than heterosexual put people at risk. And then we saw that this only happens if they're around people that don't accept who they are. And so, yeah, we see a huge drop in depression and suicidality in those people that have communities that welcome them and are that who just affirm who they are. So
Yeah.
And also I see this, and Celia, I bet you've got a handle on the data on this too, but we want people to be as healthy as they want to be in terms of the weight they want to be or the body composition they want to be, in terms of having heart health. And we know that people who, again, are not have questions about this and are not the same as the people maybe around them, there's more obesity, there's more diabetes, there's more heart disease, there's more depression, there's more, just in terms of, again, not knowing how to express this, not knowing how to deal with this. And we want people to be
their true selves.
Yes, to be authentic in their true selves. And Jenny, again, thank you so much for your comments. Again, we just want to create this space where we can all talk about this. But again, I think about maybe all the people in the past that I took care of before I was so aware. And there were questions of, why can't I lose weight? Or why am I anxious? Why am I depressed? I never knew to ask a question, how are you expressing yourself, and is that how you feel on the inside? Are you having sex with a man or a woman, and is that what you want? Or how do you feel about that? So again, I apologize to all the people in the past that I might not have asked and might not have understood, part of your story.
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with a handful of patients who, have left their families and really were seeking out, more supportive communities. And, you commend them for trying their best to find some sort of peace in their world. So, I think it's just so important to be supportive of any of our friends and families that are, I don't know, maybe struggling with some of this, and continue to educate ourselves about definitions, what this means, and providing an empathetic space.
And just to remember that people are carrying stuff around with them you might not know.
Yeah.
And it's to be kind and to give people grace and just to give them space. What I'd like to go into next are the 5 questions that you, I hate the word should, but that I would.
You can ask.
Thank you. That you can ask your healthcare provider. Thank you. And we can see if we can get some more conversation here. So question number 1, what do I do if I have questions about my gender identity or sexual orientation? Number 1, it's to hopefully, again, be able to bring this up in a sacred space. And hopefully you have a healthcare provider or a counselor that you feel safe with, that you can simply ask the question, I need help with this. And I would beg that if they don't know, they're not comfortable, they can refer you to somebody who does.
Yeah. And what I would say, if I had a patient who came to me with this question, I would say, the first thing you're going to do is take a deep breath and provide some self-compassion, because it's okay that you have questions.
There's no rush.
There's no rush. Yeah.
Yes.
Question number 2, what do I do if I feel my child is having questions or struggles about identity and is not speaking up? I think it's go for a drive in the car and get talking. Like, I don't know about you guys, but it's sometimes, when people are nervous about speaking their truth, they don't necessarily want to stare at you in the face. They want to be able to look out the window. They want to be able to, look away, and there's movement. So go for a walk, go for a drive.
Very interesting, particularly for young men in particular. They struggle with sometimes making eye to eye contact. There's some good research around that. And so it's always, they talk about, particularly for young men, taking walks and drives where you're not actually staring eye to eye can be really helpful.
Yeah, with my son, if I wanted to talk, I'd say, hey, I'll go rebound for you out at the basketball. Let's go shoot some hoops. And then he would get talking.
Yeah.
My clients that are mothers have almost all of them have heard me say this. There's also a sense in which all children need secrets. They need something that's like for them. And so allowing them to have that, if that's something that they need right now, and not necessarily pushing them to talk, sometimes it can be good for them to just kind of process it on their own through a diary or something like that, and not necessarily talk to their parents until they're ready.
Ashley, I don't know. As a mother of three, I'm gonna have to sit with that one.
But I hear what you're saying. That's kind of cool. I mean,
I love
right there with you. But it's to provide them. Let's say, here's a diary, you can write in it. I won't look at it. And then don't look at it. And, honor their privacy, and to have that in terms of, but also to keep them safe. I worry about. I don't even know if I want to go there because I don't really know that much about it. But for example, if kids are struggling with questions, and then they are getting them in unsafe places on their phones or into chat rooms that aren't safe, or again, I don't know much about this, but I would just hate that kids were left more vulnerable by not having a safe space.
Yeah. And so for that, yes, it's really important that we do talk to our kids about these sorts of things, but that we don't necessarily ask them to share with us until they're ready to. But it's really important, I would just say, to talk to kids about consent, and also to let them know the proper names of body parts. Those two things are really important to protect kids from being in spaces that are going to hurt them.
Okay. Good point.
Number 3, what if I'm open to discussion about my child, but my partner or parents, the grandparents, are not? I have another patient whose husband is not okay with this. She is okay with this. Wow, that's a lot of layers.
Yeah.
Ashley, any magic answer for this?
No, I would say talk to a therapist. It can be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think just reiterating what we just said, I mean, there's a lot of layers to this, right? Period. And it's okay to say, I need a professional who maybe has some more experience in this area to help guide me on my next steps, so that maybe you as this person don't feel so alone, right? Because you being alone is probably not going to help your kid in any possible way. And so maybe if the next step is just getting some empathy for yourself and figuring out what to do next.
And one thing that comes up for me is your child is a vulnerable one, right? The partner is a grown adult. Grandparents are grown adults. The child is a vulnerable child. And so therefore, to be protected, to have a safe space, to not be subject to taking on other people's stuff. They've got enough stuff going on their own. They don't need to take on other people's stuff, or people like a parent who doesn't understand and doesn't have good boundaries, or there's snide comments, or there's, a side, like that's not okay. And so again, I do think as a mother, as a parent, as a father, like it's to protect the vulnerable one, to protect our children. And set down rules about you. If you don't get it, you don't understand, you don't get to be around my kid. You don't get to talk to my kid like that. That's, my kid doesn't need to take on your stuff. So I can feel myself getting very protective.
Yeah.
Don't mess with them. Mother bear. So where do I look for more answers?
One great resource in the Grand Rapids area is the Grand Rapids Pride Center. It can be found at grpride.org. It's just a really great resource. It can connect you with physicians, with mental health providers, and also just provide support, not only for people who are trying to figure out their gender or sexuality, but also for parents and other caregivers for them. So,
excellent. And again, hopefully you have a provider that you can talk to. So, for example, talking to patients about how they can keep themselves, again, safe, family planning, HPV, HIV, hepatitis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, even bacterial vaginosis. And so it's really important to talk about, these issues because just because, for example, let's say a woman is having sex with a woman, that woman might have had sex with a man. There might be HPV. There might be. So again, it's doing healthcare screening and appropriate surveillance and preventative care with that eye. So again, it's really important that here, especially at True, that we know these things and we can help take care of you in a way, understanding that you might have been exposed to something we wouldn't maybe, I hate to say assume, but that maybe we don't ask the questions if you don't bring it up. So.
Okay.
So there.
And sorry, Kathy just made a comment that how much she loved the kid is the vulnerable one. Mm-hmm. They don't need to be burdened by adult stuff. So thanks, Kathy. Yeah.
Very important. What does medical care look like? So I guess I was kind of getting into this. I forgot I wrote this. Or is different for someone who is in transition, but still has biological sex organs. So for example, if someone is born as a female, has ovaries, and transitions to male and still might have ovaries, we still need to pay attention to how midlife and menopause affects, how still there's screening or potential for, of course, ovarian cancer. If a person who identified, sometimes I still stumble over those pronouns, but is born identified as a woman, transitions to a man, there still is a vagina. There still could be bacterial vaginosis. There still could be bladder infections. There still could be. So again, we know about this stuff, but it's to know that we still have to pay attention to the regular stuff, for lack of a better term. And so again, Celia, how you would talk about this in terms of screening, in terms of cholesterol, in terms of all those regular things that we look for in terms of preventative care.
Yeah, I mean, again, by no means am I an expert, but there are some different things that we look at if someone was on gender affirming hormone replacement therapy that are a little bit different than the average patient. And so again, it's just seeking out someone who has an expertise in this area that you can at least have, a reference to, just to make sure you're getting all your T's crossed and your I's dotted.
Exactly. Especially I think about high testosterone levels for someone who's transitioning to male. It can really increase risk for high cholesterol, for higher risk potentially of heart disease. If there's high cholesterol at the same time with a high testosterone, how is the liver going to handle all that? Again, a provider who's skilled at providing these care, this therapy will also be aware of that. So it's to make sure we're still, again, doing cholesterol screening, heart disease screening, et cetera. So in all of this, it's not to make sure we don't forget that.
Okay. Jenny just made a comment that the guidance counselor of the school has been a huge help. Yes, it's common, and yes, we are supportive. So that's good to hear that our community is even providing support within the school system.
Exactly. Yeah. So I want to thank everyone who is on tonight. We are truewomenshealth.com. Again, we want to provide care that is inclusive, and we welcome your questions and happy to serve our community however we can and reach as many people as we can.
Yeah, and I think we continue to hope to provide a safe space free of judgment. If anyone has any questions or concerns, as always, all of our patients know how to reach out to us with any questions or comments. And Jenny, I will look up that study and get back to you. I know Jenny had posted a study about the brain scan, so we will definitely reach back out with some comments after we read it. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate everybody being here tonight. And
thank you, Ashley. I know this is a passion of yours, to sort of keep our office, as the best office that it possibly can be for women.
So yes, thanks for this great idea.
Yeah.
All right, take care, everyone. Be safe.
All right, thanks.
Take care.